Hello, creative podcast listening people out there, and welcome to episode 2 of And So the Mind Reels podcast. This is a continuation of Where Do You Get Your Ideas? Now, sometimes a great new idea may just be an old one that we don't recognize. How many creative people reuse what has been done before? A lot of them, let me tell you. Once you become familiar with the cliches in books and movies, TV, etc., you'll recognize them. The challenge is to rework them into something which appears to be new and original. And when you do that, that leads to becoming creative. This is Lee Mueller, and this is the Mind Reels podcast. This is part 2 of Where Do You Get Your Ideas? Now, to that question, let me take a little diversion, a little excursion here, and I'll use the old cliche that is the phrase, free your mind. Now, I'll explain. I have a friend who reads every vampire book that comes out. He's a fan of every TV show and movie related to vampires. He knows all you can know about the subject of vampires. He writes stories and screenplays, and they're about vampires, which is fine because, there's a market for that and vampire-related stuff. But the problem is that he doesn't know anything else outside of the vampire realm. His mind is totally and utterly locked into the vampire genre. Unfortunately, in the vampire genre of storytelling, it can be hot and it can be cold. And when it's hot, the problem is that there is so many stories and movies and things that come out, all the really good spins on the plot lines of vampires is done, and it gets beaten into the ground. Now, since that's all he reads and watches, his chances for creating something unique and original off of that genre get smaller and smaller all the time. Now, what should he do? Should he move on to zombie-related stuff? No. I suggested to him that he read or watch something other than vampire-related material, something 180 degrees the other way. Why? Because new and inventive ideas are applied to all genres of drama, comedies, action, adventure, romance, sci-fi, so forth. Now, as strange as it may sound, even though I write murder mysteries, I don't really read or watch that much material related to murder mysteries. Long ago, I learned to open the creative side of my mind up to all possible sources of input. I became a fan of everything. I rarely watch primetime television or mainstream movies. Instead, I watch old foreign films, French and Italian and Swedish and Japanese, new foreign films, documentaries. I don't listen to popular music. I listen to classical, jazz, blues, world beat, alternative, experimental, on and on. The basic idea is to absorb everything that's out there that's left of center, meaning that's not popular right now. Because everything that is out there that's popular is doing the same thing over and over. They're taking a cliche, an idea, and reinventing it into something different. Now, if you remain open to all forms of stories, films, music, whatever, you open channels to new and different possibilities, new and different variations. Now, I remember a long time ago when I was a kid, I really liked the movie The Magnificent Seven. I took a film course in college a million years later, and we saw the Kurosawa film called Seven Samurai. Bingo. I realized, hey, The Magnificent Seven, the Western I liked as a kid, was actually a remake of this samurai movie. I went on to learn that Kurosawa had made another film called Yojimbo. I may not be saying that right. Let's just call it Yojimbo. And it was remade 3 years later as a spaghetti western called A Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood. Then, in 1996, it was remade yet again called Last Man Standing, a gangster movie. Now, the funny thing about this is that the original story of Yojimbo was taken from a novel called Red Harvest by Dashiell Hammett. So, here's a case where an old detective novel was read by a great Japanese filmmaker who reimagined the basic idea into a samurai film. Now, granted, Kurosawa has made many samurai films, but the point is the source for this film had nothing to do with samurai material. Seven Samurai was seen by another great filmmaker from Italy named Sergio Leone. Leone reimagined the samurai idea into a western. Now, eventually, an American director named Walter Hill reimagined this western idea that was reworked of a samurai idea and made it into a gangster movie. The same idea spun three different ways into something new each time. If Kurosawa hadn't opened himself to other ideas or literature beyond his Japanese heritage and found an American crime novel called Red Harvest, Yojimbo never would have been born. Then, if Sergio Leone had only stuck with traditional Italian cinema, he never would have seen Yojimbo and may never have invented the term spaghetti western, or we may have never have known that. The bottom line is, don't limit your imagination by limiting your mind. Open it up to all possibilities. It's fine if you want to just write vampire fan fiction or whatever it is, but you can get some great ideas by opening the doors and going beyond that. Now, I found that most people don't recognize a cliche factor of most stories until you actually point it out. Cliches sometimes aren't obvious because the public's disbelief has been suspended so deeply, it kind of sits in this fog somewhere in the back of their minds. Now, I have this bit that I used to do with this friend of mine, and it was based on a line I heard a stand-up comedian say. He came out and he said, "Yeah, I was watching Three's Company the other day. It was that one where there was a major misunderstanding." It might take you a minute if you're familiar with Three's Company, but it'll be funny. Now, I thought that was funny, and we took the premise of that joke and found that we could apply it to almost any old TV show that we used to watch. So we'd be at parties or social functions and stand around interacting with people, and one of us would start with a bit, say, hey, you know what? I saw that old Don Knotts movie the other night. It was great. Oh, really? Which one was it? It was the one where he got real nervous and scared. Oh, yeah, I saw that one. Did you see the old Leave It to Beaver was on the other day? It was the one where Beaver does something he wasn't supposed to do because his friends talked him into it, and then his dad finds out and has a talk with him at the end, and he learns a hard moral lesson. Did you see that one? Oh, yeah, I think I saw that one. That was my favorite episode. As we go on with our bit, the light of recognition usually comes on in people's eyes around us, and they'll say, wait a minute, that was every episode. That's my point, exactly. Sometimes you can take a cliche and reuse it over and over and over, and nobody realizes it. Some people make a living doing that. I mean, Andy Warhol became famous for painting ordinary objects, Brillo pad boxes, tomato soup cans, common objects we see every day. But what did he do? He presented it in a new and different way. Once you're aware of the cliche and the basic plot lines, the creativity comes in by trying to dress those cliches you recognize up in new clothes, maybe a new hairstyle. See if you can sneak them into a party without anyone noticing. It's similar to the old saying, you have to know the rules before you break them. Now, if we take the old romance plot that I spoke of earlier, where boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back, and twist the ending where suddenly the boy really doesn't want the girl back, or that he doesn't give a damn about the girl, then you have Gone with the Wind. Oh, I see what they did there. It was a twist on the... Yeah, exactly. If you take a few standard plots, let's take one about a washed-up prize fighter who's supposed to throw the fight but really doesn't want to. Then let's take a subplot about two bad guys who are hunting down a stolen briefcase for a crime boss. Let's mix in a little romance and weave a few threads that connect all the stories together. You may have something, but maybe not. Perhaps the public has already seen that, yeah, but let's see. What if we chop up the stories? We take the beginning of the story and let's move it to the end. And then let's take the end of it and let's move it to the middle. And then let's take the middle and then we'll move it to the beginning. That way, no one's going to notice all the cliches that we've woven in there. But even if they do, the way in which we did it will seem completely original. And that was basically the plot of Pulp Fiction. Go back and watch it. You'll recognize that. Again, once you recognize the cliches and you become aware of them, it's much easier to manipulate. So, this was the short answer of how and where I get my ideas. I see them all the time. Once I become aware of the basic plot points and ways in which people are telling the stories, and I recognize, oh, this is like the Gilligan's Island, where they really want to get off the island. That's the goal they're working toward, and they stumble upon something that may rescue them. But at the end, it gets ruined somehow by Gilligan. He stumbles over the thing and breaks it, and now we're stuck on the island again until next time. And then the next episode is basically the same story told again, but something else happens. Once you become aware of those little things as you watch movies and as you read books and as you see plays, and behind the scenes, you see the man behind the curtain that's pulling the levers. That's fine. It may ruin it for a lot of people when they go, oh, this is the one where it happens. It can ruin a lot of things for you. But what you'll also recognize is unique ways that whoever created this, whoever wrote the screenplay, the play, or the novel, has taken that and has switched it up and has reworked it or disguised it or put some makeup on it or done something to it that warrants it almost seeming original in some sort of new and exciting way, and it becomes popular. So that's what I would advise anybody. Where do you get your ideas? I look for them and I see them and I recognize them, and to be creative is to take those and dust them off and rework them. So, what homework would I give you if this was a class and this was a writing class and I told you to go out there? I'd say go home, watch some old movies, watch some old TV series, read some old books, and see if you can recognize the cliches that are woven in there that this writer or this person is reconstructing, and then maybe take that idea and use it as a prompt and say, okay, I'm going to take the boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back, and I'm going to write the next great American novel just using that, but no one's going to recognize it because I'm going to be creative. There's a good definition of creativity right there. It's taking something that everyone knows and disguising it so no one will recognize. Until next time, the mind reels with possibilities.